cost of intelligence and the abundance that comes with that, the cost dramatically falls, the abundance goes way up. I think we'll do the same thing with energy. And I think those are the two sort of key inputs to everything else we want. So if we can have abundant and cheap energy and intelligence, that will transform people's lives largely for the better. And I think it's gonna, in the same way that if we could go back now 500 years and look at someone's life, we'd say, well, there's some great things, but they didn't have this, they didn't have that. Can you believe they didn't have modern medicine? That's what people are going to look back at us like, but in 50 years.
When you think about the people that currently rely on jobs that AI will replace, when you think about whether it's truck drivers or automation workers, people that work in factory assembly lines, what, if anything, what strategies can be put to mitigate the negative downsides of those jobs being eliminated by AI?
So, I'll talk about some general thoughts, but I find making very specific predictions difficult because the way the technology goes has been so different than even my own intuitions, or certainly my own intuitions.
Maybe we should stop there and back up a little. What were your initial thoughts?
If you had asked me 10 years ago, I would have said, first, AI is going to come for blue-collar labor, basically. It's going to drive trucks and do factory work, and, it'll handle heavy machinery. Then, maybe after that, it'll do, like, some kinds of cognitive labor, but it won't be off doing what I think of personally as the really hard stuff. It won't be off proving new mathematical theorems, won't be off, discovering new science, won't be off writing code. And then eventually, maybe last of all, maybe never, because human creativity is this magic special thing. Last of all, it'll come to the creative jobs. That's what I would have said. Now, it looks to me like, and for a while, AI is much better at doing tasks than doing jobs. It can do these little pieces super well, but sometimes it goes off the rails. It can't keep very long coherence. So people are instead just able to do their existing jobs way more productively. But you really still need the human there today. And then B, it's going exactly the other direction. You can do the creative work first, stuff like coding second. They can do things like other kinds of cognitive labor third, and we're the furthest away from humanoid robots.
So back to the initial question. If we do have something that completely eliminates factory workers, completely eliminates truck drivers, delivery drivers, things along those lines, that creates this massive vacuum in our society.
So I think there's things that we're gonna do that are good to do right now. So I think at some point we will do something like a UBI or some other kind of very long-term unemployment insurance something, but we'll have some way of giving people, redistributing money in society as a cushion for people as people figure out their new jobs. But, maybe I should touch on that. I'm not a believer at all that there won't be lots of new jobs. I think human creativity, desire for status, wanting different ways to compete, invent new things, feel part of the community, feel valued, that's not going to go anywhere. People have worried about that forever. What happens is we get better tools and we just invent new things and more amazing things to do. And there's a big universe out there. And I think, I mean that literally, in that there's space is really big, but also there's just so much stuff we can all do if we do get to this world of abundant intelligence where you can sort of just think of a new idea and it gets created. But again, that doesn't, to the point we started with, that doesn't provide great solace to people who are losing their jobs today. So saying there's going to be this great indefinite stuff in the future, people are like, what are we doing today? So, I think we will, as a society, do things like UBI and other ways of redistribution, but I don't think that gets at the core of what people want. I think what people want is agency, self-determination, the ability to play a role in architecting the future along with the rest of society, the ability to express themselves and create something meaningful to them. And also, I think a lot of people work jobs they hate, and I think we as a society are always a little bit confused about whether we want to work more or work less. But somehow we all get to do something meaningful, and we all get to play our role in driving the future forward. That's really important. And what I hope is, as those long-haul truck driving jobs go away, which, people have been wrong about predicting how fast that's going to happen, but it's going to happen. We figure out not just a way to solve the economic problem by giving people the equivalent of money every month, but that there's a way that, and we've had a lot of ideas about this, there's a way that we share ownership and decision making over the future. A thing I say a lot about AGI is that everyone realizes we're going to have to share the benefits of that, but we also have to share the decision making over it and access to the system itself. I'd be more excited about a world where we say, rather than give everybody on Earth 1/8 billionth of the AGI money, which we should do that too, we say you get 1/8 billionth of a 1/8 billionth slice of the system. You can sell it to somebody else, you can sell it to a company, you can pool it with other people, you can use it for whatever creative pursuit you want, you can use it to figure out how to start some new business. And with that, you get sort of a voting right over how this is all going to be used. And so the better the AGI gets, the more your little 1/8 billionth ownership is worth to you.
We were joking around the other day on the podcast where I was saying that what we need is an AI government. We should have an AI president and have AI
just
run
make all the
things.
decisions.
Yeah, have something that's completely unbiased, absolutely rational, has the accumulated knowledge of the entire human history at its disposal, including all knowledge of psychology and psychological study, including UBI, because that comes with a host of, pitfalls and issues that people have with it.
So I'll say something there. I think we're still very far away from a system that is capable enough and reliable enough that any of us would want that. But I'll tell you something I love about that. Someday, let's say that thing gets built. The fact that it can go around and talk to every person on Earth, understand their exact preferences at a very deep level, how they think about this issue and that one, and how they balance the trade-offs and what they want, and then understand all of that and collectively optimize for the collective preferences of humanity or of citizens of the US, that's awesome.
As long as it's not co-opted, right? Our government currently is co-opted.
That's for sure.
We know for sure that our government is heavily influenced by special interests. If we could have an artificial intelligence government that has no influence, nothing has influence on it.
What a fascinating idea.
It's possible, and I think it might be the only way, where you're going to get completely objective, the absolute most intelligent decision for virtually every problem, every dilemma that we face currently in society.
Would you truly be comfortable handing over final decision making and say, all right, AI, you got it from here?
No, but I'm not comfortable doing that with anybody.
Right.
I don't.
Right.
I was uncomfortable with the Patriot Act. I'm uncomfortable with many decisions that are being made. It's just there's so much obvious evidence that decisions that are being made are not being made in the best interest of the overall well of people. It's being made in the decisions of whatever gigantic corporations that have donated to whatever industrial complex, and pharmaceutical industrial complex, and it's just the money. That's really what we know today. The money has a massive influence on society, the choices that they're making, and the overall.
Yeah, I have no disagreement at all that the current system is super broken, not working for people, super corrupt, and for sure, unbelievably run by money.
Yeah.
And I think there is a way to do a better job than that with AI in some way, but and this might just be a factor of sitting with the systems all day and watching all of the ways they fail. We got a long way to go.
A long way to go, I'm sure. But when you think of AGI, when you think of the possible future, where it goes to, Do you ever extrapolate? Do you ever like sit and pause and say, well, if this becomes sentient and it has the ability to make better versions of itself, how long before we're literally dealing with a god?
So, the way that I think about this is, it used to be that like AGI was this very binary moment. It was before and after, and I think I'm totally wrong about that. And the right way to think about it is this continuum of intelligence, this smooth exponential curve, back all the way to that sort of smooth curve of technological revolution. The amount of compute power we can put into the system, the scientific ideas about how to make it more efficient and smarter, to give it the ability to do reasoning, to think about how to improve itself, that will all come. But my model for a long time, I think if you look at the world of AGI thinkers, there's sort of two, particularly around the safety issues you're talking about, there's two axes that matter. There's the what called short timelines or long timelines, to the first milestone of AGI, whatever that's going to be. Is that going to happen in a few years, a few decades, maybe even longer? Although at this point, I think most people are a few years or a few decades. And then there's takeoff speed. Once we get there, from there to that point you were talking about, where it's capable of the rapid self-improvement, is that a slow or a fast process? The world that I think we're in, and also the world that I think is the most controllable and the safest, is the short timelines and slow takeoff quadrant. And I think we're going to have, there were a lot of very smart people for a while who were like, the thing you were just talking about happens in a day or 3 days. And that doesn't seem likely to me, given the shape of the technology as we understand it now. Now, even if that happens in a decade or 3 decades, it's still like the blink of an eye from a historical perspective. And there are going to be some real challenges to getting that right. And the decisions we make, the sort of safety systems and the checks that the world puts in place, how we think about global regulation or rules of the road from a safety perspective for those projects, it's super important, because you can imagine many things going horribly wrong. But I feel cheerful about the progress the world is making towards taking this seriously. And, it reminds me of what I've read about the conversations that the world had right around the development of nuclear weapons.
It seems to me that this is, at least in terms of public consciousness, this has emerged very rapidly, where I don't think anyone was really aware. People were aware of the concept of artificial intelligence, but they didn't think that it was going to be implemented so comprehensively, so quickly.
Yeah.
So ChatGPT is on, what, 4.5 now? 4. And with 4.5, there'll be some sort of an exponential increase in its abilities.
It'll be somewhat better. Each step, from each like half step like that, humans have this ability to like get used to any new technology so quickly. Mm-hmm. The thing that I think was unusual about the launch of ChatGPT 3.5 and then 4 was that people hadn't really been paying attention. And that's part of the reason we deploy. We think it's very important that people and institutions have time to gradually understand this, react, co-design the society that we want with it. And if you just build AGI in secret in a lab and then drop it on the world all at once, I think that's a really bad idea. So we had been trying to talk to the world about this for a while. People, if you don't give people something they can feel and use in their lives, they don't quite take it seriously. Everybody's busy. And so there was this big where the technology was to where the consciousness was. Now that's caught up. We've deployed. I think people understand it. I don't expect the jump from like 4 to whenever we finish 4.5, which will be a little while. I don't expect that to be the crazy switch, the crazy adjustment that people have had to go through has mostly happened. I think most people have gone from thinking that AGI was science fiction and very far off to something that is going to happen. And that was like a one-time reframe. And now, every year you get a new iPhone. Over the 15 years or whatever since they launched, they've gotten dramatically better. But iPhone to iPhone, you're like, yeah, okay, it's a little better. But now if you go hold up the first iPhone to the 15 or whatever, that's a big difference. GPT 3.5 to AGI, that'll be a big difference. But along the way, it'll just get incrementally better.
Do you think about the convergence of things like Neuralink and there's a few competing technologies where they're trying to implement some sort of a connection between the human biological system and technology?
Do you want one of those things in your head?
I don't until everybody does.
Right.
And, I have a joke about it. But it's like the idea is like once it gets, you have to kind of, because everybody's going to have it.
So one of the hard questions about the merge, all of the related merge stuff, is exactly what you just said. Like, as a society, are we going to let some people merge with AGI and not others? And if we do, then, and you choose not to, like, what does that mean for you?
Right. And will you be protected?
How you get that moment right, if we like imagine like all the way out to the sci-fi future, there's been a lot of sci-fi books written about how you get that moment right. Who gets to do that first? What about people who don't want to? How do you make sure the people that do it first like actually help lift everybody up together?
Yeah.
How do you make sure people who want to just like live their very human life get to do that? That stuff is really hard, and honestly so far off from my problems of the day that I don't get to think about that as much as I'd like to, because I do think it's super interesting. But yeah, it seems like if we just think logically, that's going to be a huge challenge at some point, and people are going to want wildly divergent things, but there is a societal question about how we're going to, like, the questions of fairness that come there and what it means for the people who don't do it. Super, super complicated. Anyway, on the neural interface side, I'm in the short term, like before we figure out how to upload someone's consciousness into a computer, if that's even possible at all, which I think there's plenty of sides you could take on why it's not. The thing that I find myself most interested in is what we can do without drilling a hole in someone's head. How much of the inner monologue can we read out with an externally mounted device? And if we have a imperfect, low bandwidth, low accuracy neural interface, can people still just learn how to use it really well in a way that's like quite powerful for what they can now do with a new computing platform? And my guess is we'll figure that out.
I'm sure you've seen that headpiece. There's a demonstration where there's someone asking someone a question. They have this headpiece on, they think the question, and then they literally Google the question, get the answers through their head.
That's the kind of thing that's the kind of direction we've been exploring.
Yeah. That seems to me to be step one. That's the Pong of the eventual immersive 3D video games. Like you're going to get these first steps, and they're going to seem sort of crude and slow. I mean, it's essentially slower than just asking Siri.
I think if someone built a system where you could think words, doesn't have to be a question, it could just be your passive rambling inner monologue, but certainly could be a question, and that was being fed into GPT-5 or 6, and in your field of vision, the words in response were being displayed, that would be the Pong.
Yeah.
That's still that's a very valuable tool to have.
And that seems like that's inevitable.
There's hard work to get there on the neural interface side, but I believe it will happen.
Yeah, I think so too. And my concern is that the initial adopters of this will have such a massive advantage over the general population.
Well, that doesn't concern me, because that's like that's just like better, that's a better computer. You're not like jacking your brain into something in a high-risk thing. You know what you do when you don't want them? When you take off the glasses. Mm-hmm. So that feels fine.
Well, this is just the external device then.
Oh, I think we can do the kind of like read your thoughts with an external device at some point. Read your internal monologue.
Interesting. And do you think we'll be able to communicate with an external device as well, telepathically? Or semi-telepathically through technology?
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do.
I think so too. My real concern is that once we take the step to use an actual neural interface, when there's an actual operation, and using some sort of an implant, and then that implant becomes more sophisticated. It's not the iPhone 1, now it's the iPhone 15. And as these things get better and better, we're on the road to cyborgs. We're on the road to, like, why would you want to be a biological person? Do you really want to live in a fucking log cabin when you can be in the Matrix? I mean, it seems like we're on this path.
We're already a little bit down that path, right? Like, if you take away someone's phone and they have to go function in the world today, they're at a disadvantage relative to everybody else. So that's like maybe that's like the lightest weight version of merge we could imagine. But I think it's worth, like, if we go back to that earlier thing about the one exponential curve, I think it's worth saying we've, like, lifted off the x-axis already down this path, the tiniest bit. And yeah, even if you don't go all the way to, like, a neural interface, VR will get so good that some people just don't want to take it off that much.
Right.
And that's fine for them, as long as we can solve this question of how do we, like, think about what a balance of power means in the world. I think there will be many people, I'm certainly one of them, who's like, actually the human body and the human experience is pretty great. That log cabin in the woods, pretty awesome. I don't want to be there all the time. I'd love to go play the great video game, but, like, I'm really happy to get to go there sometimes.
Yeah, there's still human experiences that are just like great human experience, just laughing with friends, you know, kissing someone that you've never kissed before, that you're on a first date. Those kind of things they're real moments. It just laughs.
Yeah.
Having a glass of wine with a friend and just laughing.
Not quite the same in VR.
Yeah.
Now, when the VR goes super far, so you can't, you know, it's like you are jacked in on your brain and you can't tell what's real and what's not. And then everybody gets, like, super deep on the simulation hypothesis or the, like, Eastern religion or whatever, and I don't know what happens at that point.
Do you ever fuck around with simulation theory? Because the real problem is when you combine that with probability theory and you talk to the people that say, well, if you just look at the numbers, the probability that we're already in a simulation is much higher than the probability that we're not.
It's never been clear to me what to do about it. It's like, okay, that intellectually makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I think probably, sure.
Right.
That seems convincing, but
now
this is
what?
my reality.
Yeah.
This is my life.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna live it. And I've, you know, from like 2 a.m. in my college freshman dorm hallway till now, I've made no more progress on it than that.
Well, it seems like one of those. There's no, you know, it's, if it is a possibility, if it is real. First of all, once it happens, what are you going to do? I mean, that is the new reality. And in many ways, our new reality is as alien to, hunter-gatherers from 15,000 years ago as that would be to us now. I mean, we've already entered into some very bizarre territory where, you know, I was just having a conversation with my kids. We were asking questions about something, and I always say, let's guess what percentage of that is this, and then we just Google it, and then just ask Siri, and we pull it up. Like, look at that. Like, that alone is so bizarre compared to how it was when I was 13, and you had to go to the library and hope that the book was accurate.
Totally. I was very annoyed this morning. I was reading about how horrible systems like ChatGPT and Google are from an environmental impact because it's, you know, using like some extremely tiny amount of energy for each query, and, you know, how we're all destroying the world. And I was like, before that, people drove to the library. Let's talk about how much carbon they burned to answer this question versus what it takes now. Come on.
But that's just people looking for some reason why something's bad. That's not a logical perspective.
Totally.
What we should be looking at is the spectacular changes that are possible through this. And all the problems, the insurmountable problems that we have with resources, with the environment, with cleaning up the ocean, climate change. There's so many problems that we
need
have.
this to solve all of everything else.
And that's why we need President AI.
If AI could make every scientific discovery, but we still had human presidents, do you think it'd be okay?
No. Because those creeps would still be pocketing money, and they'd have offshore accounts, and it would always be a weird thing of corruption and how to mitigate that corruption. Which is also one of the fascinating things about the current state of technology is that we're so much more aware of corruption. We're so much more. There's so much independent reporting, and we're so much more cognizant of the actual problems that are in place.
This is really great. One of the things that I've observed, obviously many other people too, is corruption is such an incredible hindrance to getting anything done in a society, to making forward progress. And my worldview had been more US centric when I was younger, and as I've just studied the world more and had to work in more places in the world, like, it's amazing how much corruption there still is. But the shift to a technologically enabled world, I think, is a major force against it, because it's harder to hide stuff. And I do think corruption in the world will keep trending down.
Because of its exposure.
Yeah.
Through technology.
It comes at a cost, and I think I am very worried about how far the surveillance state could go here. But in a world where payments, for example, are no longer like bags of cash, but done somehow digitally, and somebody, even using Bitcoin, can watch those flows. I think that's like a corruption reducing thing.
I agree, but I'm very worried about central bank digital currency and that being tied to a social credit score. That
super against.
Yeah, that scares the shit out of me.
Super against.
And the push to that is that's not for the overall good of society. That's for control.
I think there's many things that I'm disappointed that the U.S. government has done recently, but the war on crypto, which I think is we can't give this up, we're gonna control this and all this, that's that's a thing that makes me quite sad about the country.
It makes me quite sad about the country too, but then you also see with things like FTX, this can get, without regulation and without someone overseeing it, this can get really fucked.
Yeah, I'm not anti-regulation. I think there's clearly a role for it, and I also think FTX was a sort of comically bad situation.
Yeah,
we shouldn't learn
it's
too
worst
much
case
from
scenario.
either. Yeah,
yeah, but it's a fun one.
It's totally fun, and
I love that story.
I mean, you clearly.
I really do. I love the fact that they were all doing drugs and having sex with each other.
Yeah, no, it had every part of the dramas of it's a gripping story because it had everything there.
They did their taxes with what was the program that they used? QuickBooks. They're dealing with billions of dollars.
I don't know why I think the word polycule is so funny, but
polycule?
That was what they when you call a relationship a poly but closed polyamorous molecule put together.
Oh, I see.
So they were this is our polycule.
So there's 9 of them and they're poly,
or 10 of them or whatever. Yeah, and you call that a polycule. And I thought that was the funny that became a meme in Silicon Valley for a while that I thought was hilarious. You clearly want enough regulation that can't happen, but they're
well, I'm not against that happening. I'm against them doing what they did with the money.
That's what I mean.
Polycule is kind of fun.
Go for it. No, I mean, you want enough thing that FTX can't lose all of its depositors' money.
Yes.
But I think there's an important point here, which is you have all of this other regulation that people and it didn't keep us safe. And the basic thing, which was let's do that. That was not all of the crypto stuff people were talking about.
Yes. I mean, the real fascinating crypto is Bitcoin. To me, I mean, that's the one that I think has the most likely possibility of becoming a universal viable currency. And it's, it's limited in the amount that there can be. It's, people mine it with their own computer. It's that to me is very fascinating, and I love the fact that it's been implemented, and that at least I've had Andreas Antonopoulos on the podcast, and when he talks about it, he's living it. He's spending all of his money. Everything he gets paid is in Bitcoin. He pays his rent in Bitcoin. Everything he does is in Bitcoin.
I helped start